Welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast, where we will go beyond the balance sheet with our guests, not only to share from our personal experience as financial advisors of over 25 plus years, but also to learn from our guests about the issues and topics that are important to them. Our firm specializes in taking care of the financial plans for individuals and small businesses by helping our clients identify their individual goals and taking a conservative and ongoing approach to helping accomplish them. We are located in Hickory, North Carolina, and look forward to continuing to serve our clients and our community. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Welcome back to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast. Looking forward to this episode today. Just as a reminder, when you pull us up online, go to our website at seretirementplanners.com, and you can find all of our content on podcast there. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, and all the other places that that we produce our podcast on. So thank you for being a part of it. And today, Stewart and I, one of our partners at the firm, are going to have a little conversation about kind of the first of the year, New Year's resolutions, financial impact, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think this is the first time we've been together on the show, I believe.
I think so. Just the two of us, yeah.
We'll see how this works out.
Yeah, they may not invite us back, so I don't know. But one of the things we want to talk about was, I think like everyone, you have New Year's resolutions, and we're coming up on the end of the year. This will probably come out sometime in January. But obviously, financial plans. It's been a pretty bumpy financial year for a lot of people, and going into the first of the year, how do you kind of have a reset? I think.
I think that you hear a lot about resolutions this time of year, and you hear a lot of discussion about whether it's actually worth your time to do resolutions or not. I personally think at the end of the year is a good time to kind of reflect, pick a date and reflect on what's happened, and then think about what you want to try to accomplish in the next 12 months. It's a good time to do that, and I've done it myself for years, and sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully, but it's definitely been a bumpy ride in the financial world this year, and it was almost like January 1st happened last year, and it's just fell off the rails.
It's been a challenge really since the start of the year last year. I think too, when you look at, that's a really good point about take the time to reflect. Mm-hmm. And I think with that, we can be hard on ourselves about things that we didn't get done, or things we didn't accomplish, or where we're behind in certain areas, whether it's, trying to exercise or eat better or whatever. You just haven't done a good enough job, or even taking care of your finances. And I think it is important to reflect, and then also give yourself some grace. This is not everybody's got it perfect. And even most of the folks that we work with, you're going to continue to need to monitor and manage those plans along the way. And so finishing up a year and starting out a new year is a good time to reflect and kind of take inventory of what your to-do list might look like in terms of your financial plan.
For sure. So, when you're setting goals, there's, I think it's important to know why you're setting goals. What's the reason? If you're not committed to trying to accomplish that goal, you're probably not going to fail at it. I think if your mental state is not correct, and it's not important to you, it's going to be tough to follow through on it.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of times sitting down with your financial advisor can help kind of build a little inventory of the why. So what is it that you feel like you haven't gotten done? What is it that you think's on the back burner with your finances? And why is that important? And that's where, we get to have conversations with our clients and start talking about really what a good, solid financial plan looks like.
Right.
And what are the pieces of that?
We got a lot of noise coming in here.
Yeah, sorry guys. We'll turn that down.
Okay. I didn't know what that was. They'll edit that out.
Yeah. I don't know what you just said, actually.
Yeah, we can just start at the why now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where if you get a chance to sit down with your financial advisor, when we get a chance to sit down with clients, they may have a list of things that they wish they'd gotten done, or maybe they didn't quite put enough into retirement savings, or maybe they didn't quite do certain things financially they wanted to, or maybe even goals that we had set with them.
Right.
And you just kind of get to take inventory of that and have a conversation about what's important and what are the pieces and the ingredients for a healthy financial plan.
That's right. That's right. And, when you're, this kind of jumps back to looking back and see what you've accomplished. It like you said, don't beat yourself up. If you've worked some sort of a plan to try to achieve a goal, you're probably better off than you were, before. You just have to look at the positives on it. You're closer to your goal than you may think you are a lot of times. But, we see that all the time, and kind of also to the commitment part of that. I mean, how often do we see somebody come in wanting a financial plan and then they're not, always fully committed to going through the process of working that plan? It takes, your advisor does a lot of the work, but it takes some work on the client's part too, to just sit through and think through those goals and the gathering the materials and there's some accountability there. And then once that's together, then working the plan, as far as the savings and the going to see the attorney and things like that.
Right.
So
I think a lot of those details too, when we think about how that conversation happens for the people that we get to work with, it's usually not a deliverable of a financial plan. And then as long as you stay on track and as long as you go step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3, life happens.
Right.
And it could be anything from, small minor things, you need to car repair or a water heater goes out or something like that. And it could be major things like a death in the family or an illness or something like that. And all those things, I think we do a good job of talking about those with our clients. But when they actually happen, we've also got to be able to give ourselves and for us to help give our clients a little grace and say, look, this is part of the process.
Right.
And so if you feel like you're behind, maybe you don't even have a real good reason for being behind in 2022 other than you're just trying to catch up on life and all the other things that are going on. And so your financial plans have been on the back burner. That's okay. Now's a good time to, like you said, reflect, look back on it and try to get some things back in line.
Right.
Yeah.
So, once you figure out why you're doing it and what you want to do, actually part of figuring out what you want to do is contained in the how, and before we get into that, and these don't just apply to financial goals. They apply to, all kinds of different goals, and we'll talk a little bit about those, but, there's one book that I read several years ago, and I've since have gotten it on, I don't guess it's tape anyway. It might have been tape when I first got it.
It's CDs.
Cassette, but it's digital format now probably. But The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. I'm not sure if a lot of people have heard of that, but someone gifted that to me. And the basically the premise of it is making minor changes in your life will turn into big effects. The compounding of doing just a little bit each day, or a little one example, and we use it all the time in financial world, is if you save a penny today and then save 2 pennies the next day and multiply that each day for a month, you'll have accumulated close to $1 million or something like that, and apply that kind of process to your life where if I'm wanting to lose weight and I just walk each day and maybe cut out putting mayonnaise on my sandwich at lunch, over time that adds up to a lot of calories that you saved. From consuming. And one thing. One year I decided I wanted to do some long distance running. And as you can tell, that's my strength.
It wasn't this year.
No,
yeah,
it wasn't this year.
It was another year.
But I'm going to put it out there. I'm kicking it back up here. But great example. If you don't work, like not many people can just get out and run 26 miles.
Yeah, off the sofa.
Right. So you start with walking / running a mile, alternating, and the next week you maybe run a mile, and then the next week 2 miles, and so on, and pretty soon you've accomplished your goal. So that's been really important to me. But when you're talking about the how, and you might can elaborate on this too, but you want to make goals that are achievable, but also is kind of a stretch for you. So if it's too easy, you may be like, well, it's just like a normal life anyway, and not pay much attention to it. If it's too hard, you'll give up on it.
Well, I'll tell you a good example in the financial world of where that might apply. A lot of people are going to kind of look back on this year, and their statements have been maybe up and down. It's been one of the more volatile years across all asset classes. We've had, political turmoil, and we've had geopolitical turmoil kind of across the world, and certainly stocks have gone up and mostly down, and even bonds have gone up and mostly down. And so a challenging year for sure. But when you talk about setting goals, really one of the great things is if you feel like you're behind in terms of your financial plan, not just on paper and what you've already done, but right now is a great opportunity to kind of reset. And when you talk about that compounding effect, or maybe setting goals that are achievable but sometimes a stretch, well, would you rather be investing in a market that is currently less value than it was this time last year? Right. Well, yeah, ideally we want to buy low and then accumulate dollars as we get older and closer to that retirement goal. So maybe one of those objectives for the first of the year is to think about how you can stretch and find a little bit more cash flow within your budget to be able to put more dollars to work in a down market.
Yeah, and I think the most successful investors and retirement savers take that approach a lot of times, and it's anytime we've had a pullback like this, it's something to consider.
And it doesn't have to be major moves.
Right.
A lot of times people are going, well, what should we be buying? Is it Carnival Cruise Lines or Amazon or GameStop or whatever, all that kind of stuff. But really, a lot of times, to your point about the compounding effect, it's just the little incremental changes. So maybe it's drafting your account a little bit more this year. Maybe it's moving more dollars into retirement accounts than you have in the past. So there's a lot of things that you can do, maybe changing that 401k allocation. Now's a great time to look at those things.
$50 more out of each paycheck or
That's
something,
right.
Which is probably not going to change most people's lifestyles that much.
Right.
Absolutely. Good points right there. Be able to measure. Another thing is be able to measure your goals if possible. Now, not all goals are numerical with measurement, but there's probably some part of the process that's measurable, like I saved every month, or I got up and ran every morning for 10 straight days, and set that, be able to measure not only the results, but the activity.
It's not really measuring so much as it is accountability, right? It's that you're creating that system that that I think the term we like to use, like you measure what matters. So like what's most important to you are the things that you pay attention to, those details. Then they're measurables. There are things, so it might be a dollar amount. It might be a certain number of deposits or a certain amount of savings per week or whatever it might be. But it's just creating that activity that now is a documentable, sort of accountable process to you. That's a big part of it. And usually when we do that, I know it's no different with our financial health than it is anything else, our personal health or otherwise. If we try to do it on our own, it's going to be a lot harder than if we bring someone else into that conversation.
For sure.
Whether it's your spouse, your financial advisor, your CPA, your accountant, whoever it might be, it's good to have someone else as a part of that conversation.
Yeah. And with that, I mean, you're talking about measurable and accountability, a time frame is important. That doesn't mean that it has to be a 12-month time frame. It needs to be something that you can see, I think. And personally, I like to be able to have short time frames to achieve small goals, which add up to kind of back to the compound effect thing, that add up to achieving my big goal and reward. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that. It's pretty self-explanatory there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're just chunks, right? It's just it's baby steps, it's whatever. I think when I look at the kind of work that we do with our clients, what we want to try to help is almost create a bit of a to-do list. Mm-hmm. Whenever we have a new client come in that we haven't worked with before, I've found that it's typically 18 to 24 months of work that needs to be put in place before their plan is relatively buttoned up.
Yeah.
Like, it's never going to be finished. I realize that, but I just mean in general with a new client relationship, a lot of times people come to us and they go, here's a statement of an investment account that I have, or my 401k, and I just stopped working, or I just changed jobs or whatever, and I want you to make a great return for me.
That's right.
Well, that's only one piece of the puzzle, and that's only one step in the process. And so a lot of times the kind of work we do is so comprehensive, and it's covering a lot of their whole financial ecosystem. And so that takes time. It takes time to get appointments with accountants. It takes time to get appointments with attorneys. It takes time to work that system to make sure that we've accounted for a lot of the planning details that you and I do. Right. And so I think that's a good example of when we start talking about taking those small steps of create that to-do list. Sit down with your advisor and go, all right, well, what are the things we need to get done? So, a lot of times I would tell someone, well, by next quarter, I want you to have your will updated. Mm-hmm. It's been over 5 years since you reviewed your will. We need to make sure your beneficiaries are updated. We've had some tax law changes and got to make sure your beneficiaries match up the right kind of way. That's a small goal with a pretty short time frame, but it has lasting impact.
Yeah. And like you say, change is always happening in the midst of that too, and always will.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Yeah. And so also, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but, focus on the activity, not the end result. A good example is that my son, who is a senior in high school, he's big into baseball and sports, and he was telling me that one of his close friends who's also a pretty good baseball player, has set a goal to bat 500 with his batting average and hit 10 home runs in the high school season this year. And kind of led me to the opportunity to talk with him about, that'd be a great achievement if he did that. But how do you just wake up and decide, how do you make that happen? Because it's much like investing. Baseball is unpredictable. The best of the best in the pros, which is pros versus high school, but 300 batting average is a great
fail 7 out of 10 times.
Right. So that's not to say his goal is not achievable, but I think he's probably more than likely going to be disappointed if that's the end all be all. But I said, if I were you, and I said, this is something I wish I had learned when I was in athletics that I've learned in my professional career, is set some small goals along the way, kind of back into that number. So if I want to bat 500, what do I need to do on a daily basis to give me the best opportunity to achieve that, And you could see it was like he really hadn't thought about that. Now he does do daily stuff, but doing it purposefully is a little different than just going out and swinging it, 100 pitches each day or whatever.
Sure.
So, that's one big thing, I think, when you're trying to work a plan of goals and financial plan as well, I think is, focus on the activity and learn to enjoy the process of the activity. And then the reward will be there with, one day you wake up and the reward's there. And it helps when you have somebody overseeing the whole project, like an accountability partner or financial advisor.
Yeah. And I think too, that in a similar way, a lot of people, you have to be careful about relying on the stock market to be the thing that provides you that goal. So when you start talking about, batting 500 or hitting 10 home runs in a season, there's a lot of pieces at play there, where you are in the lineup and who the other pitchers are and who might be on base and whether the coach tells you to walk or you got to sacrifice bunt or whatever.
Right.
There's a lot of things that you have no control over
For sure.
when you're dealing with that. And I think when you work with someone from our team, you have the opportunity to look at your broader financial plan so that we can build a fence around some of those risks. And so it's like, well, given this opportunity, we want to maximize returns here. We want to protect assets over here.
Right.
And this is all a part of that overall goal, even though we can do them in small chunks that are repeatable, that are measurable. But it's not necessarily saying, well, I need to have $7 million by the time I retire. I think all of us, when we have a client who kind of picks that number out of the air, we go, well, what for? Like what, let's talk through what are we going to do with those dollars? How do we accumulate it? Now, we may end up in the same place. We may agree that that's the right number, but we want to understand more about how do we get there and what are we going to do with those dollars when we get there.
Right. So, which kind of leads to the next thing, and we were going to talk about, and it's funny how we've sort of started talking about financial planning. We've kind of led into the whole life, basically. So, where we're at today's society is your financial life kind of impacts your whole life, and vice versa. It's kind of one circle there, in my opinion. So when you're setting your annual goals, we recommend, and also when you're looking at your financial picture, look at your health is very important. I think we should always try to continue to improve our health in some manner, and that is one thing that I struggle with because I like to do what I like to do.
Not always the healthiest.
Not always the healthiest thing.
I can relate.
Yeah, but it is something that will catch up with you eventually if you don't take a step back and at least try to have some moderation on things and that kind of stuff. So, increase our knowledge and continue to learn. It's if you're once you stop learning in life, you're probably going to stop existing, in my opinion. So, continue to learn, find things that fascinate you. Continue to learn about how finances work. And I think that's one thing we do well at Southeast Retirement Planners is work with our clients to continually educate them on what's going on, keep them abreast of the current situations and that kind of thing. So,
yeah, I think that's really important. And, certainly outside the lines of financial planning, just the idea of we've seen so much, I don't think turmoil is even quite an adequate term, but just sort of the social and political environment, just so much dissension and turmoil in that area. And I think that a lot of us, and I attribute most of this to social media, but you get to sort of stay in your own lane and you sort of surround yourself, even virtually, you surround yourself with people who think the same way you do. And you watch the same, maybe you watch cable news and you watch the same news channel. And, those news channels are all very, very different. And so somewhere in there might be some amount of truth. But if you're only watching one channel, then that's the only information you're going to get. So that might be a goal, that I think would be good for everybody's finances. It would be good for everybody's mental health, is maybe cut back on the social media interaction. That would probably be something we could all do this year.
And it is a hole you can fall into quickly.
No doubt. No doubt.
Any of us. Which rolls right into family and relationships. And, that affect what you were just talking about with social media affects family and relationships. Make it a goal to strengthen those relationships. But back to the last 2-3 years with the pandemic and being away from people, we're starting to get back out in and go to parties and communicate and be around people and go to church and that kind of thing. Continue to strengthen those relationships. That to me is the most valuable thing you can do in life. And it also, what I've found is that doesn't hurt your finances usually either. When you have a good network of people that care about you and want to help you succeed.
No, you're exactly right. I think we had an interesting year this year. My mother-in-law passed away in February of this year after battling a brain tumor for a while. And so that brought a lot of the relational pieces really close to home for us. And I think you're right that if you can commit to spending that time, making those phone calls, sending that text message, whatever it is, those are the things that kind of give you some perspective. And it really helps. It helps play into that idea of just grace, and everybody's got a lot going on. And so if your financial plan and meeting with your advisor hasn't been on the top of your list and you've just sort of put it on the back burner, it's okay. And we're not going to give you a hard time when you call to set the appointment. We just want to spend time with you and kind of reconnect and make sure that you're doing the same.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, and then of course we've talked about finances, and those are just some things to look at. On the next slide here, we've just got some financial goal, more specifically on your finances, some things that you might want to consider.
So if you could look at, I mean, and this list gives you kind of some broad direction on emergency fund and paying down debt perhaps and saving more and all those kinds of things, creating financial habits. We've sort of touched on a lot of that.
That's right.
So what would be, if you could give someone, when we talk about the measurables and the little activities and short-term goals that create long-term impact and compounding and all that.
Right.
What would be one goal directly related to your finances that you would suggest somebody consider for like a New Year's resolution, like a financial resolution?
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of variables, like what their current situation is. I mean, the first thing is where are you?
Okay.
Where are you at right now? So, for example, if you're somebody that lives paycheck to paycheck, I think the review your emergency fund would be one goal that you want to specifically look at.
Right.
And then, most people recommend 3 to 6 months of monthly expenses to be covered. So then you got to figure that out, your monthly expenses, which a lot of people don't take the time to do. I know it's something I've neglected. I need to go back home and review.
Don't count Christmas spending.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Well, and I've got 3 kids in college and that kind of thing.
We don't want to pull up the Amazon bill or anything like that.
It's scary. It's scary. But look at that, and then just start. What can I knock off in 12 months? Without, putting myself in more debt, so, and that's something that you probably could use some help with, because that's one place where you need some truth being told to you, because it's easy to look at your own, monthly expenses and say, well, that's a necessity, or that's, it's nice to kind of review that with somebody you trust and it's not judging you over that,
I think that, that's a really good one to know, just to go, okay, well, where are you? If you don't know where you are,
right,
you don't know which one of these things apply the most.
That's right.
You don't know what's the priority.
Right.
So finding out where you are is a really good goal.
Yeah.
New Year's resolution. And that's not going to be one meeting. That's not going to be in January, like your gym membership, and then you never go back in February. It's going to take a while to really figure out where you are. I was thinking that my number one sort of suggested goal would be to create a budget, which kind of addresses the same thing. Yeah. And I've had a lot of experience through the years with whether it's like Dave Ramsey, financial peace coaching and things like that, just working with budgets. And one of the things that I think is most people don't want to do it. They don't know how to do it. And they're afraid to do it because households, husbands and wives are not going to be on the same page. And just how do we navigate that? And it creates fights and all that's partly true. But I think the one piece about a budget that is a little bit of a secret is you have to give yourself permission when you sit down with your spouse to create a budget. You give yourself permission to get it wrong every single month. You have to know that it's supposed to be wrong. So whatever category of spending that you have, you want it to be so specific that it can't be met every single month. A lot of the biggest mistake people make is a lot of times they go, well, I'm going to create a cushion in my budget. So now we have an extra $300 a month just in case we spend more at the grocery store, just in case we spend more on gas, whatever it is. Don't do that. Name every dollar, be as specific as you can, and give yourself permission to get it wrong every single month. So if you have an overage and you spend more in gas money, well, it's going to be less somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you know what that is. So now your budget, your line item for eating out now just got less because you had to put more gas in the car. And you feel the cost of that.
Whereas if you have that cushion,
then it gives you permission to blow it in every category.
And then you end up with
it gets worse. So as long as you can just say, hey, I know that you spent more money playing golf this month than you said you were going to. Or you can say, hey, I know you spent more money getting your hair done than you said you were going to. And that's okay because you know where it's coming from. Yeah. A lot of times we just try to create a general budget and give ourselves that cushion, and that causes more problems. Get it as finite as you can, and then know that when you review it every month, you're going to have overages in areas that you didn't anticipate. And just be okay with it.
Yeah.
It's a work in progress.
That's a good point. And I think, honestly, for all 5 of these bullet points, that's probably the starting point. And everybody has once you get the budget, then working the budget, and there's a lot of different things that play along with that too. It's not a straight line. Just do what the spreadsheet says. You got to deal with real humans with that too.
No, that's right. So, yeah, of course.
Having somebody to work with you through that process is obviously a big benefit for that. But just keep working. Knowing, like your good point, knowing that you're going to mess up. Sometimes sometimes you're going to blow up that budget and you can't help it.
Yeah.
But there's always the next pay period or the next month.
But you've created the framework where now you can just reset.
Right.
And you can just start back again, and that's okay. That's
more
than half the battle.
Which is how goal setting and achievement happens. I mean, health, a health workout plan, same way. You're gonna have a day where you don't feel like working out, or you get sick and can't go work out. You got to choose the next morning. Do I stop? Do I just blow up the whole plan, or do I, get back and start the day where I left off? So, it's a great point.
Well, I know we've got a lot of resources that we can share with clients on sort of tasks and things to do to get, we have a big list of those things, but really just wanted to highlight a few things today that are maybe just a good train of thought or just some ideas for people to consider as we start the year off, to think about sort of goals to set and just how to get 2023 off on the right foot.
I think so. And at the end we're going to leave this slide up. You might want to pause it. There's some really good financial things that you want to look at. Our upcoming newsletter, probably in the first quarter here, will also have a list of this to our clients. If you want to be on our newsletter, contact us. We'd be glad to put you on there and get some of this good information. But these some good bullet points that you'll want to take a look at as you're making your goals for the year and making sure your ship is pointed in the right direction, I guess. And so you'll probably have some questions about this. Give us a call. We'd be glad to tell you a little more about it.
Yep. And you can get all of our information on our website at seretirementplanners.com. And thanks for tuning in to our podcast again today. And be sure to like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff, and start 2023 off on a good foot with a little bit of gratitude and start working the plan.
Yep. Happy New Year.
Okay. Thanks.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor. Member of FINRA, SIPC. Southeast Retirement Planners is not affiliated with LPL Financial or registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor.